Welcome to Prepare For Takeoff. I'm the creator and host, Terry L. Cyrus. We're the podcast dedicated to amplifying Black excellence. Every week, we sit down with a proven professional or a rising entrepreneur. This week, we're sitting down with Captain Leighton Jamieson. Captain Jamieson, what's going on, my brother?
Not bad. How are you? How's everything?
I can't complain, man. It's an honor and distinction for you to be the first airplane pilot to join the podcast. Considering the name, Prepare for Takeoff.
I know. It's only natural.
I'm just so in awe, especially when I see a brother in the cockpit flying these huge Airbuses, considering some of these pilots got their origin stories dating back to the Tuskegee Airmen.
Yes, indeed.
And knowing all of the challenges that people of color had to navigate in order to sit in those places and spaces. So I'm sure we both agree that you're standing, not just standing, you're flying on the shoulders of giants.
Thank you so much. Very much. I mean, I'm very appreciative of my job, my title, my struggle to get where I am, and it's very rewarding. Every day I wake up, I have to pinch myself sometimes because I'm like, wow, this is really happening.
Where are you originally from? What was it like growing up there?
I'm from Jamaica. I'm from a small rural area called Porus, Jamaica. It's not on the map. It's a little rural community, maybe about 1,500 people, halfway between Montego Bay and Kingston. And from what my grandparents said and my mother said, when we grew up, we always seen airplanes flying overhead, at 35,000 feet. And that's kind of what got me interested in aviation. And I remember my mom, I'm an immigrant myself, but my parents were immigrants. And one Christmas, my mother had sent me an airplane toy. And that kind of what sparked the interest. And ever since then, I pursued it.
So at some point, you were in Jamaica and you migrated to the United States. And
Yes.
Where did you migrate to?
So left Jamaica, migrated to Brooklyn. Most Jamaicans come from Jamaica, either go to the Bronx or Brooklyn. So we came from Jamaica to a basement apartment in Brooklyn and went to high school. I went to Andrew Jackson High School in the 90s. So if you don't know, that's one of the roughest high school in Queens. Actually, I was in the school with the rapper 50 Cent, but he didn't come to school. But I was in there the same time as him. Ed Lover was a security guard there, and I've always had the dream to become a pilot, so didn't have the resources. So after high school, I joined the military to get money and also to get my citizenship. And that's kind of what propelled me in the path towards my eventual career as an airline pilot. I went to Andrew Jackson, so I got into a little bit of trouble. Nothing crazy, but my father was like, you going to the military. So I went to the Navy, and I did 4 years there, 4 years in the Navy on an aircraft carrier. And seeing the military jets and talking to the pilots, that more made me want to pursue that dream. I got lucky because my ship was, we were in a dry dock in Norfolk, Virginia. They have a Navy pilot program that on your days off, the military pays for you to get your private pilot license. So I started there in Norfolk, and the benefit was, if you're in the program and you have to work, you get time off to go do the flight lessons. So I was like, this is a win-win. I get to go fly, and I get to not have to serve duty on the ship. So I started my flying there, and when I got out, I used the GI Bill I went to Farmingdale University in New York, and I continued there, got my private, multi-commercial, all those licenses. That brought me to, I think, 2002. So I still didn't have enough time to get an airline job. But because I was prior military, I got a job at Northrop Grumman, which is in Bethpage, as a weapons system analyst from the military. Did that for about 2 years while I continued to bill hours. And once I got my requisite time, I was out. I went to a regional airline flying the CRJ 900 out of JFK. It's a small 70-seat jet. I flew for Delta Connections for about 3 or 4 years. Then I got laid off. This is 2010, 2011. And during that time, I needed money. But everywhere I applied to, they were like, you're overqualified. You're an airline pilot. What you doing applying at Home Depot? You're not going to stay. You're not going to go work at McDonald's. So I had to struggle. Then I got hired by another regional airline, flying again for Delta Connection, flying the CRJ 200 until I got enough hours. And luckily, JetBlue called me, and I've been there ever since, 2014 to now. I haven't looked back.
If you were a person that wasn't in the military. What is the pathway to becoming a pilot? Seems as though because you were in the military, you were able to inherit the resources that came with the military, and then did you just continue your flight hours after you got to college? That's what you did. Is that something that somebody that's not necessarily in the military, would they just have to get their number of hours to become certified and eventually become a commercial airline pilot?
Yeah, so now I don't know if you remember back in I think 2009 there was a crash in Buffalo, New York, Colgan Airlines. When that airline crashed, unfortunately, they raised the required time requirements to 1,500 hours. When I got hired, you only needed 500 hours total times. So now you need 1,500 hours to get a job, entry-level job as a commercial pilot. So nowadays, in order to get those hours, you can either be a flight instructor, or if you're lucky, you can get hired by a small airline flying people from, White Plains, little small regional flights, or even doing like weather survey, traffic. You gotta hustle. I had met a gentleman who owned the airplane back in, this is like 2002. And wherever the airplane went, I was like, sign me up. I'll fly with you for free, because once I'm flying a multi-engine airplane, I could log that time. So you got to hustle and make connections. And also, aviation is a small community. People you meet, you never know who they are. They might be the one that you can say, hey, man, I got my hours now. You're at Delta, you're at American, you're at JetBlue. Hook me up, pass my resume to the chief pilot, so very big in networking, that's for sure.
That's kind of what I figured it would be, because I didn't know what the requirements were. I just automatically assumed that if you were in the military, it may be a more direct path to becoming a pilot, but there may be some people that may not necessarily want to serve, because I've seen the commercials on how to become an airline pilot and things of that nature. It seems as though they're doing some outreach to today's generation and becoming a pilot. And I'm sure that there's people out there, our listeners, our viewers, who may have seen the same advertisements and say, well, look, if I want to become a pilot, but I don't necessarily want to serve in the Air Force or the Navy, how can I do so? So it would just be a matter of joining a flight school, or how would you get those hours?
So there are two ways. I wasn't a citizen when I joined the military. So in order to be a military pilot, you have to be an American citizen, and you have to have your college degree. So I was fresh out of high school, needed to get my citizenship, so they wouldn't hire me as a pilot. But if you do have your degree, you can join the National Guard, the Coast Guard, the Army. All the branches have airplanes. You just gotta take the exam and get lucky. And if you're selected as a military pilot, once you're done, you can say, I want to go to Delta, FedEx. They'll hire you right away, because the military always gets a higher tier classification than a regular civilian pilot.
There's one thing to say I can fly a plane and that's a prop plane or whatever, but I'm certain the liability associated with flying a commercial airline, they would rather have you adhere to the specs of the United States military than somebody's flight school in Florida.
Exactly. So if you're flying military, a heavy jet like a C5 or C117, that's a bigger airplane than what we fly. And those guys fly around the world. They fly some of these flights they fly are like 15, 16 hours straight. So airlines tend to give military pilots a higher qualification status than regular civilian. At the end of the day, we all do the same job. Once you get hired by an airline, it's the same training, and once you get the job, you adhere to the same specifications, the same requirements.
So the key is just getting in there.
The key is getting your time and getting that first job.
Right.
And also, once you get that job to your airline, you might as well state it, because in the airline, seniority is everything. So you get to Delta. Say you get to American Airline, but you live in Atlanta, and it would be ideal for you to work for Delta, because Delta is based in Atlanta.
Right.
But to leave American Airline and go to Delta, say you were an American Airline for 4 or 5 years, you just lost 5 years seniority. Even though you were a seasoned guy, say flying the 737 for American Airline, once you leave American Airline to go to Delta, you start at the bottom like a brand new guy that has never even seen the airplane before. Wherever they're hired first, they tend to stick there because you want that seniority.
So when you first get that airline position as a pilot.
Mhm.
Where do you start? I'm sure you don't start as a captain.
Start as the first officer, and you fly, you gain experience. Because when you first start flying the airplane, even though you're qualified, there's still a lot of nuances you don't know because it's just, you learn a lot of stuff while doing the job. You learn different airplanes, different airports, different approaches. So it's a lot of stuff to learn on the job. So you do have the basic qualification to be safe, but the little nuances of the airplanes in the airport you learn while doing it. And you're flying with a senior captain that's been there before. So they'll kind of guide you, and we have a lot of mentorship as well.
Do you have to have a certain number of hours as a first officer in order to be qualified to become a captain?
Yes, it differentiates from airline to airline, but you do have to have, most airlines, you have to have at least 1,000 hours at the job in the seat before you can even apply.
It's just not a matter of saying you have the hours, so you have to apply, and then is it a whole selection process?
So during like the 2008 time, when a lot of American airlines were hiring, a lot of guys went to the Middle East, to Dubai, to go fly for Emirates. They were paying some big money. So you could have been at Emirates for 10 years, flying the biggest airline in the world, the A380, a captain. And after 10 years, you say, you know what, I want to move back to the States. I want to go to JetBlue. I want to go to Delta. You go back to being a first officer. Even though you had all the experience flying the biggest airplane in the world, all over the world, anywhere in the world you've been, you go back to being a basic first officer on the airplane, even though you have all the experience. And as time goes by in the airline and your seniority comes up, you can apply to be a captain on your specific fleet.
Let's say you, Captain Jamison, obviously build up your tenure at JetBlue, but you say, I want to go fly for Delta now. Would you have to start over?
Start over. So say I was to go to United, and I'm on the Airbus, and United says, we hire you, but you're going to be on a 737. If you take that job, you're a 737 junior first officer. Look, just like that.
I'm sure that
all over again.
Is indicative of your pay as well, I would assume.
Pay and also quality of life, because when you go to a new airline, all of a sudden now you're on reserve. That means you don't have a schedule. Whenever the senior guys call out, they call you 8 o'clock. Hey, pack your bags. You're going to Billings, Montana. Be at the airport in 2 hours. And you're like, okay.
Get out of here. So did you have to start off on call when you first started as a first officer?
Everybody starts off on reserve. And also, too, say you take the captain upgrade, right? So now you're the junior captain. You back on reserve again. So when another senior captain calls out, they call you 4 o'clock in the morning. Hey, pack your bags. You're going to Kingston. You're going to Guyana. You're going to wherever.
How long does it take you to develop that seniority as a captain?
It all depends on the dynamics, because after COVID, I know with Delta Airlines had a real senior pilot group. So you've been on Delta. A lot of the captains were old, so they're all retiring. So they had guys that were getting hired by Delta, and within 6 months, were able to upgrade to a captain on like the narrow body fleet. So it's all it. And they had to, I mean, don't get me wrong. They might have been military or have prior aviation experience, so they were qualified for the job. But it just, at that point, they needed captains, so they were picking the most experienced captain. Even though they were a brand new hire, that guy could have came from Emirates that had 10 years as a 380 captain. That's at Delta now. So all of a sudden, he'd been there less than a year. He's a captain on the 737. So he'll be on reserve maybe for 3-4 years, but he still has that captain seat.
Are there people that are just content with being a first officer because they have seniority in that position?
Definitely. There's some guys that could take the captain upgrade, and because of their seniority in the company, they might become a relatively senior captain. However, the quality of life that they have as a senior first officer, and they make good money, trumps the responsibility and the hassle of taking that captain seat. It's a lot of senior first officers, they're content, and the quality of life, with aviation, you don't have to live where you're based. We have guys that live in Europe. So after work, they jump on a flight, they go home to Turkey. They go home to Norway. So as a senior first officer, he might be able to do a schedule where he works 12 days in a row here in 1 month. Then he's off for like 30 days so he can go back home to Norway, and he'll work the last 12 days of the next month. So seniority is where it's at.
Right. That makes a lot of sense, man. And look, and we're not trying to pocket watch or nothing, but is it a huge disparity between a senior first officer and a junior captain?
Not really, because, and again, to a senior first officer, they're going to get those premium trips that pay big money. So some senior first officers that they play their cards right make more than a junior captain by far, because they're getting what, we have like, say for instance, there's a big weather storm where flights are getting canceled and they need people to fly, they need pilots. And that senior first officer, he knows whatever trip he picks up, he'll be number one on the list. So he'll be able to make sometimes triple pay for flying one leg. So there's ways to make money.
You got to just stay on your hustle.
They have guys that know how to maneuver. And when you see their paychecks, you're like, man, oh man.
But aren't there some regulations on how many hours you can work in a row before you have to shut it down?
Yes, typically it's 100 hours of actual flying time, but we have a lot of soft time. So say for instance, you know the term deadhead?
No, I'm not familiar with that.
So deadhead is where you're on the airplane as a crew member, but you're in the back as a passenger. So say for instance, you're gonna fly to Aruba and back. It's not legal to fly there and back as a pilot. So what they'll do, they have you deadhead down there and the passenger as a passenger in the back, and you just fly one leg back. So a typical Aruba from JFK to Aruba and back is usually about 10 hours of flying, right? So they'll get paid the full 10 hours, even though half of the trip they were in the back taking a nap. So those senior guys, they love those trips because then, even though you have 100 hours to fly, you only flew, even though you got paid 10 hours, you only flew 4.5.
Right.
So
right.
so on paper, it shows that yes, they flew, and say they do that trip several times a month. So they might only have actual flying 85 hours, but yet they get paid for 140 hours worth of flying because the deadhead still counts as you're working. Even though you're sleeping, you're still on the clock. You're still in your uniform. And I'm sure you've seen pilots on the airplane, in business class knocked out. They still getting paid because they work in the flight back.
Now, to have him on there, is it kind of like he's on reserve in the event that they need him?
No, so when you're doing a deadhead, you're actually gonna work. So you know you're working. Reserve is different. Reserve is like, say you're a junior pilot, you bid for reserve, and you have like a 4-day stretch of reserve. So say you're in reserve Monday through Thursday, and it'll be typically like a 12-hour block. So you'll be on reserve from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. So anytime between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m., they can call you and say, hey, Leighton, we got a trip for you. We have you going down to Fort Lauderdale. You're going to spend the night down there and work the flight back to JFK. Or it could be on the first day, we have a 4-day trip for you where you're going to be gone from day 1 to day 4. And you got to do it. Those senior guys, again, they might bid reserve. And because they're so senior, they put call me last. So out of the 30 reserve people, they have to call it. So they have to get through everybody before. So those guys might only work 1 trip a month, and they still get paid sitting at home. So that's why seniority has its perks,
Right. So, but I guess my question is, how are you justifiably paying him when he sleep?
Okay, so perfect scenario. I said Aruba. So you can only fly 8 hours a day, right? So they need somebody got sick. The crew that was supposed to fly the plane back to Aruba got sick. So they need a pilot that's going to fly the plane back. So they call a reserve guy. If they call a reserve guy, they don't pay anything because those guys are on reserve. But say the reserve guy has a 2-hour call out, and there's a super senior FO that's like, I could be there within 20 minutes. So in order to not have a delay, the airline's going to say, okay, 20 minutes, we're going to pay you double. So you're going to go down as a passenger to fly the plane back to New York. So even though he's in the back sleeping on the way down, he's still on duty because he has to fly back. So he'll get paid for the entire rotation, even though he's only flying one leg. Yes.
And then the person that was flying there, then he'll be the deadhead on the way coming back.
No, they're laying over in Aruba, so they're doing their regular schedule. They're gonna fly to Aruba, lay over, and fly back the next day.
So when that person is doing a layover in, let's say, Cancun, is he being paid while he's doing that layover?
Yes, you get paid per diem.
Okay.
So because you're not flying, but you're still on duty. You're still at work. So you're pretty much on a vacation where you can enjoy the resort. You can go have a drink or two within reason. It's like you're on vacation, but you have to be responsible to know come tomorrow morning at whenever the flight leaves.
Right. See, now that I can better make sense of why this person is on the back of the plane getting paid, because you're going to pay the person that's at the resort. He's having a good time and he's getting paid. So you have to break the trip up where we need people that are going to be able to fly back from Aruba, and we need people that are going to be on standby in Aruba. So somebody's going to fly us there, and then somebody on standby essentially when they get there, or we have somebody in the back as a deadhead, and he has a fresh hours that he can utilize to fly us back to JFK.
Yes. So for instance, how the airline works, like even the other day, I flew to Cartagena. I lay over there, and the next day, the people who fly the plane in, they lay over, and I take the plane back to JFK. So it's like a flip flop. But say I was to get food poisoning down in Aruba, I'm not able to fly back, and I call systems off. They will send another pilot. They'll deadhead a pilot down there to operate back. So he'll get paid for the full 10 hours because it's 4.5 going down there, 4.5 coming back. So he'll get paid for the whole thing, even though he only flew the one leg from Cartagena back to JFK, if that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense. Let me ask you this question. Now, realizing that you were in the military and you were able to become acclimated with what it was to be a pilot because you were working alongside pilots, and by comparison, somebody that may have just been in school, they always had an affinity for aviation, and they decided to join the Coast Guard, Army Reserve, National Guard, whatever the case may be. With all that being said, what was the biggest hurdle that you faced in making that transition? Or what do you think the biggest hurdle that they may face making that transition into aviation?
Biggest hurdle is money. When I first started flying, cost of like a private pilot license was, $4,000. You can get all your ratings for under $60,000. Now you're looking at $200,000 to get your foot in the door. And especially for minorities, that's a huge hurdle. That's a house in Alabama. So think about it. You're from the rural South, and you have a young black kid that said they want to be a pilot, and you're saying to yourself, 200,000 to go to Embry-Riddle, 300,000 sometimes. And unfortunately, a lot of minorities don't have that kind of money. Another hurdle also is, as a minority, you don't see someone that looks like you in that job. It's not in your brain like I could be a pilot. Whenever you go on an airplane, you tend to see the typical pilot, older, white gentleman, military. And that's the face of most commercial pilots.
Thinking about starting your own business? Make it real with Shopify, the all-in-one platform trusted by millions to sell online and in person. Whether it's merch, art, or digital goods, Shopify gives you the tools to build, grow, and succeed. And here's the best part. When you sign up using the affiliate link in our show notes, you're supporting Prepare for Takeoff and starting your business off right. Click the link and start your free trial today. Now that I better understand why the suggestion that you made was, once you get your college degree, join the reserves, join the National Guard, because now in the military, they will pick up that tab.
They'll pick up that tab. You'll get a lot of experience. And when you apply for the airline job, you get to the front of the line. And that's the thing. Most airlines will choose a military person before they choose a civilian, in my opinion.
It makes sense. Now, as far as the training, because I know we've seen Top Gun and we've seen all of these different movies that dramatizes what the training consists of, what was some of the rigors that you had to really develop a high level of mental fortitude to get through?
So with me, I'm balanced. It's not military where in the military, once you're hired as a pilot, that's your sole focus. Every day, fly, fly, fly. I'm going to college. I was working at Sears as a tire boy, while I'm doing everything. So the balancing act, because I remember, and when I was training, it was like $65 an hour to rent a Cessna 172. So mind you, I'm at Sears making $7 an hour. So essentially, you work all day long just to pay for 1 hour of flight training.
Mm,
You know what I mean? So you're like, oh my God. So when you think about it, you're like, it's almost an insurmountable mountain you're climbing.
right.
So think about it now. Nowadays, a Cessna 172 to rent with an instructor, you're looking at $200+ an hour. So you might be, say you have an entry level job at, say, Target, Walmart, whatever. You might have to work 3 or 4 days to pay for 1 hour of flight training.
Mm.
You
So
know,
that's that financial barrier that you discussed. The
the
financial
financial
piece.
the financial barrier, and then if you do have good credit and you take out a loan for a flight school, you're taking out a loan for $150,000, $200,000. You're paying that back for the next 30 years. And
Right.
granted, there is a goal lining when you do get your airline job. Nowadays the pay is excellent. A lot of these regional airlines now have, your first day, $100,000 sign-on bonus because of the pilot shortage. So you will make the money back. But when you're first starting, and like when you're first starting, you're looking up at the hill, you're like, I will never get to the top. And once you get there, you might say, you know what, it was worth it. But in hindsight, it's always easier. But when you're starting out, it's rough.
I'm sure it helps when you see somebody that looks like you and somebody who
That
can give
too.
you that insight on the things that they've learned, things to do, things not to do, things to consider, things to be leery of. And you're right. When we get on the plane, more times than not, I can't even recall there being a time that I've seen
Mhm.
somebody that looked like me flying the plane.
Nowadays, too, there's tons of resources, especially with social media. On Facebook, there's what they call the underground runway, and it's a bunch of black pilots who mentor young minorities. There's OBAP, the Organization of Black Airline Professionals. They have ACE academies in Atlanta, in Dallas, and they're free. And they're geared towards letting minorities see black mechanics, black pilots, black air traffic controllers, black engineers. Because unfortunately, a lot of minorities, you'll never see that. You grow up in the Bronx, Brooklyn. Who do you see that looks, go be a bus driver, go be
Right.
sanitation. That's what you see. Being a pilot, air traffic controller, a mechanic, that's not something that's generally talked about. And also, too, your parents didn't know another airline pilot. A lot of these, I'll say white pilots, my uncle was a pilot, my grandfather was a pilot. So they have something to draw on because they have seen someone that look like them have that same job. And they get pointed there, do this, do that, do this. So they get to the job first.
It makes sense. But let's say like the physical rigors, once you're in a military by comparison to aviation school, talk me through the differences because we know the money barrier, but what's
Mm,
one of the other stark differences between the training that you'll receive as somebody who attends a private aviation school by comparison to the
mm.
military?
It's funny, like in the industry, I look at, with YouTube, it's a lot of information out there. And
Mhm.
also too, a lot of you could go on YouTube right now, a lot of minority people who join the military, they have it rough as well too, because they don't fit the status quo. Like you're not supposed to be here. Who are you?
Right.
You know? And what their struggles versus what a typical pilot looks like is different. A lot of them get washed out the military, and you hear them, I had to be twice as good because when they went up for a stage check or a check ride, they already were facing bias. You're not supposed to be here. So any little mistake you make, you're flagged. Versus another person that might do it, and they say, you know what? Let's see that again. They get a second chance.
Right.
So on the private side, like me coming up doing it on my own, same thing. You have stage checks, check rides, and I mean, once you come prepared, the biggest thing is to be prepared. The information is there. Know what you need to do, and also know your rights. Know that if I'm within plus or minus 50 feet, and they say, "Wait a minute, you were a little bit short," you say, "No, I was within 50 feet." Stand your ground. That's the
Right.
big thing. If you know what's required, then they can't tell you anything because you can say, "I did it within specs."
So it definitely would serve them well to do their research as far as going on YouTube, speaking to people in the industry if they don't necessarily have access to people like you in the industry.
Also, there's a lot of mentorship online now because, like I said, social media, it's a young person's game. They're on their phone 24/7 anyway. So they could
Right.
easily join up one of these groups and they could talk to, say you want to be a F-18 Super Hornet pilot in the Navy. You can go in these groups, and once you put your interests, you'll find a black F-18 Super Hornet pilot that can kind of guide you and tell you the do's and the don'ts. You
Mm-hmm.
want to fly the Raptor, the top of the line military stealth plane. You go in these chat groups, in these networks, you'll find someone that will guide you, and they'll give you, hey, DM me, or someone will point you to these persons of contacts and say, hey, talk to this person. They'll kind of put you down the right path. Because remember, a lot of these people, they figured it out on their own back in
Right.
the early 2000s, the 90s. So they're here to make it easier for minorities to kind of get where they are, break down those barriers.
Right. So what's some of the aptitude that people can prepare themselves for that opportunity if they're still in high school, even in college?
Mm.
Should they put a point of emphasis on mathematics, science?
Mathematics and science.
Okay.
Mathematics and science, yes.
That would
And
assume.
the funny thing too, like I did physics, calculus, and all that stuff, and nowadays the airplane they do all that stuff for everything is computed for you. But you have to have the knowledge to get there. When you get there, you might never use it, but you have to have the knowledge, that piece of paper that says yes, you have done this to get the job.
So you're saying becoming a pilot is more mental than physical? Is that a safe assessment?
I say it's a mix. It's a mix. You do have to have the physical attributes to do it as well,
Okay.
especially military. You got to go through survival training, high G load. You got to be physically fit because those airplanes you're flying, you're doing high maneuver, a lot of G load. Whereas commercial, on the Airbus, you yank that side stick to the left, the airplane's gonna say, whoa, 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 I'm gonna give you this much of a bank. I'm not gonna let the passengers in the back feel anything crazy.
Right.
Whereas the military, you do this, the plane is flipping around upside down.
Back to your earlier point, if you can fly at this level in the military, considering all of the specs in which you had to go through,
Yes.
because by comparison, and so you really answered my question in this regard.
Mm,
If you go
mm,
to aviation school, then the
mm,
rigors that would come with you going to the military, so it's give and take. If you have the
give and
money and you don't want to go through all those rigors, you don't want to go through all of the different survival schools and things of this nature,
mm,
all of the rigors that will require you to fly, all
mm,
of the maneuvers and these planes that come with this high capacity fighter
mm,
jet, things of that nature, that we're going
mm.
to pay you, but the degree of difficulty goes from
It's, yeah, exponential.
right. It's pretty significant. Now, if you go to a
Hmm.
school down in Florida, you won't have to go through any of those things. You don't have to worry about all of the maneuverability and flying at Mach whatever or
Yes.
and being captured and all the things that you have to
Mm,
contend with on the military side. But you're gonna have to come with that $200,000.
exactly. Because it says exactly. And also too, people. Because one of my friend's son. He's interested. I said, go to the Coast Guard. What do you see the Coast Guard doing? The Coast Guard, they fly helicopters and they fly like it's like a military version of a private jet, and they look for like drug dealers or people that's lost at sea. You
Right.
can do that, and that's a lot of things that the average minority will never know that. When they think military, they think F-18s, fighter pilots. You could join the Coast Guard. You could join the National Guard. You fly military missions to Haiti, and you fly like a C-130 or C-17, which is a transport category aircraft, but just a military designation. For instance, Delta flies 767 to go to Europe. The military, their new airborne tanker is the military version of a 767. So you say you fly 767 in the military for 10 years, and you go apply for Delta. They're like, oh, this guy know what he's doing already. You can start next week Tuesday,
Right, sign them up.
Sign him up. And he's military. So it's
Right.
one of those things. I do wish I had my citizenship when I was in the military, because I'd have probably gone military aviation route. But again, too, it's a lot of rigorous.
And then when you do the National Guard or Coast Guard, are some of those rigors removed?
No, I'm thinking. The Coast Guard, I think they train with the Navy. So you still go through the same military pilot, because at the end of the day, even though it's Coast Guard, you're still a military pilot.
Right.
So you still go through a lot of those, a lot of training, the survival. Because at the end of the day, you might be in the middle of the Amazon or in the middle of the desert doing something, and you get in a situation where you have to bail out. You still gotta survive. They still put you through the same rigors. It's just once you finish your basic training, you go fly what the Coast Guard tells you. You're gonna fly X, Y, or Z.
I have a family member. He's been a pilot for a number of years. He was in the Air Force, and then he transitioned from Air Force to being a commercial airline pilot. So I have some familiarity with what that process consists of, but I don't want to assume that our viewers and listeners are fully aware of how you get to that pilot seat or even that first officer seat. When people don't realize it's as simple as 1, 2, 3, then they can often be discouraged. Oh, that's too much, man. I don't have the money, and I'm not going through this. I'm not going through that, whatever. I'm cool. I'll just go get that job in sanitation that you just mentioned. Or I'll get a job working for the city. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. But I think if they see more people who look like them and they can really explain to them and rid them of whatever misnomers that they may have about that particular profession, then I think they can find themselves in a far better situation. And that's kind of what we do here, man, with this podcast. We want to be able to show people examples of people that they can be. Or whether it's somebody that's a commercial airline pilot like yourself, or somebody that works on Wall Street, or somebody that works in entertainment, and not just somebody that you would see on stage, but maybe somebody who works behind the scenes, or maybe there's somebody who's a publicist, or maybe somebody who's a sports executive. People need to understand that there's so many different things that you can be that you don't always necessarily see. And the things that you do see are made possible by the people that you don't see.
No, even me, like when I'm on the airplane and I see like a young, black kid, Spanish kid, whatever, and I see him, I'm like, hey, come in here, come sit down, and a lot of them are like, wow, I'm like, hey, have a seat. So my first flight was an American airline from Jamaica to New York. I was maybe 10 years old or so. And to this day, I still remember when the captain was like, yeah, come up here, come look in the cockpit. And I was like, wow, oh, this might be too much for me. I might have to reconsider, But it reinforced that interest, like, man, if he could do it, why can't I do it, And so, and black female pilots, those are like unicorns, JetBlue, we have 2 out of say 5,000 pilots. We have 2 black female captains, less than 0.5%.
Now, are they former military or what? Are you familiar with their story?
All civilian. I'm gonna try. I'm probably gonna reach out to one of them and see if she could do one. She's big in OBAP, and she mentors a lot of female minorities to pursue this career. I'm sure she's had at least 30, 40 black female pilots that have entered the industry because of her.
And we need more of that, man. And salute to that sister for doing that work. And just to understand that there's a need.
She from the south side of Chicago, to give you an idea where she coming from.
Well, yeah, so she from the neighborhood.
She from the neighborhood.
This episode of Prepare for Takeoff is brought to you in part by Riverside, the platform that I trust to record studio quality podcasts right from my laptop. With Riverside, I get crystal clear audio and 4K video. Plus, it's super easy to use. Whether you're a beginner or a pro, Riverside helps your podcast sound amazing. Try it out for yourself. click the affiliate link in our show notes and start recording like a pro with Riverside. We have to take it upon ourselves to do that outreach, bring in those young brothers and sisters, and even talk to people that are in our same age group, because you have people who went for the banana in the tailpipe and said, well, let me go get that job in sanitation. They're in a line of work that they're miserable doing, and they feel like this is life as I know it, without realizing there's ways in which you can pivot out of that situation. But you have to just be given a pathway to do so.
We have pilots that started out as, what's this guy name? I forgot what he did, but like I said, he hustled. Another minority pilot, he hustled. I think he worked, might not be sanitation, but some menial job. And he bust his tail, sacrificed. He said he was working 1 week for 1 hour of flight time. And eventually he met someone who kind of said, you know what? I have a plane. Whenever that plane move, I'll let you know. Come with me and you log the time. And it's a lot of networking. And once people see your drive and your passion, doors are opening for you.
One of the things I say, Leighton, is you have to get people to see themselves in you. And if they see that you're serious and you're dedicated and determined to do what it is you say you want to do, they want to be able to say that I poured into that person and I contributed to their success. But they may have heard from 10 other people that they want to do the same thing, but then that drive wasn't there, because the minute they didn't get that scratch off result, then you stop hearing from them.
Yeah. And again, people might just see and say, oh, it's easy. It's a lot of mental work behind the scenes, studying weather, aerodynamics. And as a pilot, you got to know the mechanics part of it, the engineering part of it, the weather part of it, the dispatcher part of it, everything, because you're going to draw on each part in different phases of flight to kind of make your decisions and ensure that you take off safe and you land safe.
Absolutely, man.
So it's not just flying the airplane is actually the easiest part. It's what behind the scenes stuff that makes every flight successful.
And one of the things, and I'm sure what better person to answer this question than you, but one of the things that I've been told is the most difficult part of air travel is takeoff. Is there any truth to that, as well as landing?
No, I think takeoff is the easiest part. Engines running, certain speed, you lift off. Landing now is when the wind is blowing, visibility is bad, it's a long flight, so you're not 100%, and you got one chance to put that airplane going, 150 miles per hour on that 1.5 mile stretch of pavement. That's when you become hyper-focused. Even if you're a little bit tired, for that last 5 minutes, adrenaline, heart pumping, senses, everything, you are one with the airplane. And when you feel those wheels touch, you give yourself a pat on the back like, man, that was a rough day. It could have been snowing, you coming in icing, zero visibility. So you basically see the runway the last 3 seconds.
Wow.
You got to put it down.
3 seconds? That's insane.
Just like, for instance, JFK, I think if you're landing on the runway 22s, the minimum height is 212 feet above. So you have to see the runway at 212 feet. So you think about it, you're coming from, 36,000 feet. And you have to see the runway for 212 feet. So the last 3 seconds is when you finally see the runway and you click off the autopilot and put it on the runway.
Man, that's intense, bro. That's intense. So
the whole way down, you don't see anything. Maybe like at 250 feet, you might see a little bit of lights in the haze. And at 212, you finally see the first officer or the other pilot might say runway in sight, and you gotta look out there, see the runway, and say landing, and put it on the ground safely.
So that's what you have to take it off autopilot, is what you're saying?
Yes, because most of those flights, the autopilot will take you down to minimums. And at minimums, that's when you have to click it off and land. Our airplane, we have auto land as well, but there's other criteria to take that you have to do to be able to do an auto land. When it's like 0-0, where there's no visibility, so you don't see the runway at all until you feel the airplane hit the ground, and the autopilot actually lands the plane and starts braking. So you don't see anything.
Man, and meanwhile, we're just in the back chilling.
And you're in the back saying, "Oh, that was bumpy. That was a rough landing," not knowing what it took to put you on that ground safely.
Right. So just from this
Mm,
conversation, man, I'm sure our viewers and
mm.
listeners, myself included, would have a whole level of appreciation for what it is that people like you, men and women, do to get us from point A to point B safely. And
No problem. Thank you. Thank you.
yeah, because a lot of these things, I'm sure I'm not alone, you probably take for granted. Oh, well, it's customary, not realizing the
Mm,
rigors that come with it.
No, exactly.
But in the same regard, we can't allow our young men and women be discouraged by those
Be
rigors.
discouraged. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, because they could do it just as much. And especially the young people growing up now, they're going to have more technologies at their fingerprints than what we have. Because what I have now, the guys that were flying in the 80s didn't have any of that stuff. And the guys that were flying in the 80s versus the guys that were flying in the 60s, that's like dinosaur time to them. So
Right.
with technology and innovation, it does make things a lot easier, but it also still has a challenge, you know?
Right. Oh, I'm sure, man. I can only imagine. Just from this conversation, I'm hearing the
Mhm.
challenges that go along with being a pilot.
Every time you go in the cockpit, turn to the left and take a look and go say hi. Ask the flight attendant, "Hey, can I say hi to the pilot?" You know, we as long as we're not busy, we don't mind people because at the end of the day, that was me once when I was, 10 years old on that American airline flight, saying, "Hey, can I see the cockpit?" And they were like, "Sure, go ahead." Especially young people, young kids, 15, 16, 17,
Right.
or even younger. That might be the thing that sparks their interest, and all of a sudden, they might be the next guy that's a test pilot that's flying the next generation of planes. You never know.
That literally just happened to my great nephews who came to visit me.
Mm-hmm.
The pilot got them to sit in the cockpit, got photos of them, and that's something that I'm sure they're going to cherish forever. My
Mm-hmm.
nephew was 9, my other nephew was 12. But
Mm-hmm.
it's those kind of moments that shapes who a child comes to be
Exactly.
as an adult.
Exactly.
And I think it's imperative that we, focus on exposing our young people to all the things that they say they want to be. If there's something that they have a interest in, then we have to find a way to give them the resources, give them the exposure to get them to understand and realize that all of those things are possible. You have to just put in the work
Yes,
and,
indeed.
and do all of the preparation.
The big thing, put in the work.
You got to
Put
put in
in
the
the
work.
work. Anything that's worthwhile is not going to be easy.
Absolutely, man. And they realize you got to put in the work on the basketball court. You got to put in the work on the football field, the soccer field, the
Mm-hmm.
baseball diamond. Well, this is no different. You got to put in the work. If you are a professional in any capacity, every professional is going to put in their 10,000 hours
Mm-hmm.
to develop their craft. It's just a matter of what it is you're going to be doing. And you should be doing something that you enjoy doing it because you'll be doing it for an extended period of time.
Because even like a typical flight, say a typical flight JFK to Florida, you start thinking about it. You wake up in the morning, even though you're home, you're looking at the weather. You're driving to work. You listen to the weather. Okay, Florida, there's thunderstorms down there. So even though you're not even on the airplane, is one of those things. You get to the airport, you get the weather delivered to you. You're looking at that. You're looking at, okay, we're gonna be landing in 2.5 hours. What's the weather gonna be like down there? Okay, I'm coming back to New York at the same time. What's the weather gonna be back in New York 8 hours from now? It's a lot of stuff where you don't really think about as a passenger. A lot of times passengers say, "We're delayed because of weather," and they're like, "Well, my friend told me it's clear in the million miles visibility in New York." What they don't realize, there's a line of storms between Jersey and New York that's affecting. They
Right.
just see what they look out their window and see. So it's a lot of things behind the scene that goes into making each flight successful.
Leighton, I really enjoyed this conversation. As we close out, I wanted to give you the opportunity to leave our viewers and listeners with 3 things that you feel will help them prepare for takeoff.
So the 3 things I always say to people: number one, positivity. Always be positive. Put yourself first. Second thing is, do not take no for an answer. Kick in the door. You bring your best game and always be prepared. Lastly, put God first. That's it.
That's great advice. Captain Jamison, I really enjoyed our conversation. You are the epitome of work-life balance. We caught you on the move, juggling a number of different things in real time. If there's any information that you want to share as far as how people can reach out to you, if they want some additional insight, if you're comfortable with sharing that, by all means.
The big thing, especially with the young kid, the young viewers, social media, use that. Look at OBAP, OBAP.org, I think, or you can even Google ACE camps, and these are primarily for minorities. They're free in the summer for kids, I think, made age maybe 11 through like 17, where it's paid for by the airlines. It's like a camp for aviation kids where it exposes you to air traffic control, pilot, mechanic, everything. Look into those things. And, you can always reach out to me. Shoot me an email. It's my last name, JamisonLO@yahoo.com, if you need any information. And I can help point you in the right direction.
Captain Jamison, man, salute to you.
Thank you so much.
You give Prepare for Takeoff a whole new meaning. Once again, Leighton, thanks for giving us so much of your time. Much continued success. I truly appreciate it. And I also appreciate our viewers and listeners. Whether you're watching us on YouTube or you're watching us on Spotify or you're listening on Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Audible, iHeart, or Pandora. As you know, every week we're going to continue to bring you proven professionals or rising entrepreneurs. And all of these conversations, just like this one, will help you prepare for takeoff. Leighton, thanks for joining us, my brother.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks for the opportunity to share my story.